You spent this bunch of this last week in Portland, a team that got off to a really good start and has backslid. Dame, you were there for Dame's 60-point game. You were also there where Dame kind of um, got snippy with the media about his expectations for the team. I wonder if you could take us through what happened and what you kind of saw your time in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting. I think, you say sniffy, and it was kind of only notable because of the fact that Damian Lillard I think he's won the, you know, media award for like most media friendly player. I forget what the name for that award that the Pro Basketball Writers Association gives out is. Uh,
The
and,
Brian McIntyre Award.
oh, right. Yes. After
Oh no,
the
Brian McIntyre is for the best.
PR staff.
No, let me take that back. Brian
Yeah.
McIntyre, good man, but that's not for that. Yeah, but go ahead.
Uh, yeah.
Magic
And
Johnson Award, maybe? No,
that sounds like it might be right.
okay.
Yeah. Anyways, he's won that before, I'm pretty sure, and is just phenomenal. One of the best players I've ever been around, and sort of understanding what the media is doing, and taking that quite seriously, win or lose. And that's what made it surprising. I believe it was disrespectful, was what he said, that the questions he was getting after their loss. That was the game they lost to the Lakers after they led by 25 at halftime, and I think it was a combination of frustration about the game, and then just kind of being asked about the upcoming trade deadline and whether the Blazers should improve. The specific question he was asked was not necessarily maybe the one that was set him off. It was just kind of the line of questioning, because I think psychoanalyzing Damian Lillard here. Obviously, I don't know what he was thinking, but it was kind of like he was being encouraged to say that the Blazers needed to trade some of his teammates to upgrade because of the timeline and their urgency to win. Well, he is still capable of playing at this level, which is he's playing as well as he ever has in his career. And that's what I think makes
He
it all
will, I
the more
assume, be a
disappointing.
Western Conference All-Star next Thursday. I assume.
Has to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was on this podcast back in November for the small sample size theater. And one of the things we talked about then when the Blazers were 9-4 was that they were really outperforming what the shot quality from data from Second Spectrum said they should be doing defensively. And lo and behold, they were sixth then in defensive rating. Now they are 25th, which is about what we would have projected based on the shots that they were giving up at that point. That defense is still a little better than the last two Stotts years, where one of those, I think they were the 6th seed, I believe, the year that they lost to Denver in the first round. But the offense hasn't been as dominant as those. They were top 3 every season from 2018-19 through 2019-21. They're still a top 10 offense at this point, but not quite at that super elite level that they were when CJ McCollum was really going alongside Damian Lillard.
Yeah, they started the season 9-3, and they are 14-23 since. So 9 games under 500 since. They got slapped around on Saturday night by the Raptors, who are in a pivotal West Coast trip right now. They spent a lot of money in the offseason. And Yusef Nurkic, who has played, by the way, Jackson tells us it is the Magic Johnson Award. Thank you, Jackson, our producer. They have spent a lot of money in the offseason, both on Anthony Simons and Yusef Nurkic, and they went and got Jeremy Grant. In addition to extending Dame Lillard to, he's really extended out now. He's going to be one of the richest, highest paid players in NBA history. And so I think that this isn't a team that is making decisions like they want to be considering whether they should tank or not, because I do think that's something that they should consider right now, because in all honesty, if you look at the teams in front of them, they're going to have to jump over quite a few teams. And one thing that's very interesting is that Jeremy Grant, who is playing great for them right now, I'll be interested to hear what you think of how he's performing. He's eligible for an extension. He has because he's in the middle of a contract, he has a ceiling that he can extend to. Do you know what the number is off the top of your head?
Don't off the top of my head.
Okay. It's something in the 20s per year. And he has not signed that extension. I don't know. I mean, I assume that it's been reported, I believe by the Bleacher Report, that it's been offered.
Correct.
It is not a surprise that it's been offered. It's kind of a no-brainer to offer it. Um, and I assume that he's doing that because he thinks he can do more in the summer, not necessarily because he's not
not
happy
committed to more.
Portland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is that if you can't get that extension signed, because right now you look at the mix of the team and you're like, it's not a winning team. Um, will it be a winning team a year from now? Maybe. I don't know. I can't see the future. What do you do with Jeremy Grant, especially when you're in a situation where this is a really good draft? Do you just you have a conversation with him and you get a feel that you're going to be okay in the summer, and so you just say, I'll write it out? Do you say to yourself, well, we're going to make this a huge priority, and if it gets into a bidding war, we're going to outbid everybody because we have his bird rights, and so be it? Or do I say that there's people out there? I mean, there's people talking crazy about like 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby and 2 first-round picks and a prospect for Bojan Bogdanovic. I mean, think about what would happen if Jeremy Grant all of a sudden popped up on the market in February. Now, I don't know if he's gonna. I'm not saying I have heard any of that, but I can see what's they got to be mulling around, and so it's not an unreasonable question to Dame if it's asked in a certain way, because last year Dame had the surgery. They took their team down and went and got a lottery pick. Now, my feel from what I know about what the Blazers have done is that they want to add to this team. That they want, I don't think it's a secret that if OG Anunoby was placed on the market by the Raptors, I mean, there'd be a number of teams going after him. But it is known that the Blazers would love to try to get OG Anunoby, just like it was known that they really wanted Jeremy Grant as well. Dame played with Jeremy Grant on the Team USA. They had a good relationship. And by the way, they have played well together here in Portland. But I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk. Like, absolutely. I think it's a conversation looking at where they are in the West, which I think is 12th place right now, 12th or 13th place. Maybe they're a little bit better than that. But anyway, maybe it's insulting to them that I'm even suggesting that they would consider maybe trying to go back into the lottery with Victor Wembanyama on the board. And by the way, Mike Schmitz, who was their assistant general manager, one of our colleagues at ESPN, Mike Schmitz discovered Victor Wembanyama in the scouting world before anybody, just about. Some of the French folks maybe knew about Victor Wembanyama as I've been, I spent some time over there recently as I've been doing preparations for some stories that are forthcoming. I've watched Victor Wembanyama video as far back as when he was 9 years old, Pelton. Mike Schmitz.
I'm trying to imagine. I've been to my 10-year-old nephew's games and his practices. I'm trying to imagine what Victor Wembanyama looked at it like at that age.
Well, he could barely run because his feet were so gigantic for his body. And he threw one of the things when you hear about Wembanyama from people who've known him for a long time is he kind of throws, when he was younger, he just kind of threw the ball all over the place. Like he would try passes that were insane. And I don't mean when he was 9. I mean like when he was 17. When he was 17. He's gotten better with that. But that was definitely, you could see that when he was 9. By the way, he was playing with 11-year-olds in the footage I watched. He was not playing with other 9-year-olds. So he was very tall, but there was maybe one player on the other team who was as tall as him because he was 2 years older. But you know what he was like was he's very competitive. You hear that about a lot of guys, but Victor is very, very competitive. And like whenever his team would give up a basket as a 9-year-old, he would slam the ball on the floor. He was frustrated. By the way, the game that I watched the film on, he didn't start. So that kind of tells you where he was. Anyway, Schmitz is a legend. People in France and French basketball, Mike Schmitz is like he's a deity. They just love Mike Schmitz over there. he is as close with the Wembanyama family as anybody outside the Wembanyama in the sort of NBA sphere does. He, trust me, has a very, very good feel for what that guy is. He's known him for a very long time. So obviously, this to a Blazer fan is probably insulting that I would be talking about this, but you were just there. Do you think I'm totally out of my mind to discuss the idea that they would go backwards and that the question to Dame, while it may have irritated him, wasn't completely ridiculous?
It's interesting because I think to a degree, the question to Dame was more about, what if you have to trade a key piece to get someone like OG Anunoby, more than that, trading away pieces or going towards the bottom. I think the difference between this year and last year is, like, last year, Damian Lillard was not himself. He needed that abdominal surgery. And by the time he was going to be able to come back, the season was already lost. There wasn't really anything for them to play for. They're not yet in that position. So I mean, I think it's probably, from their standpoint, their viewpoint, similar to the Lakers with LeBron. Like, we can't afford to throw away a season of this guy playing at this level. And he was so incredible in that 60-point game. So Grant have looked this up from our colleague Bobby Marks' great resources. 4 years, 112 million is the maximum extension he could have signed. I think there was a world where maybe if they had agreed on that, wink, wink, last summer, and he had immediately signed that once he become eligible, it would have made sense. But now he has outplayed that. I think he'll do better than that on the open market, where he can do an extra year. He can go up to 5 years. The Blazers can offer up to 233 million.
Oh my God, they can't do that. They can't.
I mean, I'm not just saying they're going to necessarily go that high, but that's like the scale of the difference between what he's allowed to extend for now and what he could get this summer, and why it makes sense to wait.
Okay, maybe I'm just out of line. Maybe I'm out of line. Even talking about it. Am I out of line?
I don't think you're out of line, but I just don't think that's how they're thinking. Now, I do think what's a question before the deadline, besides this possibility of adding, is if you're going to re-sign Jeremy Grant, if you intend to re-sign him, it is going to be almost impossible for you to re-sign Josh Hart, who has an unusual situation where he has a player option this season. In the unlikely event he picked it up, it would be non-guaranteed because of the way his contract with the Pelicans, when they signed him before trading him to Portland, was structured. The assumption is he will almost certainly opt out and potentially make more than that. So I think he would be the player to watch if you're going to trade someone who's an impending free agent before the deadline, especially if you can get someone back who maybe is not quite as good as Josh Hart right now, but is under contract for multiple years and can fit into your salary structure.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy who a lot of teams would have interest in, especially some of those teams we talked about earlier. Yeah. Well, anyway, so what is your, well, in that discussion with the media, basically what Dame was frustrated about was, don't put it on him to call out the front office or make some demand. He was saying that wasn't fair, and I understand why he had that position. If you look at these teams, if you look at Oklahoma City, who is, right on the bubble now. You look at Portland, you look at the Lakers, you look at Utah. They're all basically neck and neck. I'm going to put Phoenix and New Orleans a little bit ahead of that because both of them are really banged up. Booker will come back. If he doesn't come back, it's not relevant. Obviously, Zion will come back, and we assume that Brandon Ingram will start playing better. Of those teams, like, you look at Portland. I mean, how do you handicap where they're at and what they're headed for here?
So, I mean, the good news is that compared to a few of these teams, they have a better point differential. Remarkably, they have a better point differential than the Warriors, who are 6th in the Western Conference at this point, and the Clippers, who are 4th. The downside is, a lot of what we were looking at early in the season was, okay, maybe they'd won a lot of close games early on. Some of the defense wasn't going to be sustainable, but that's okay because the schedule was really unfavorable and they had some health issues early on with Dame missing some time. So these things are going to even out. Well, now they've got their rotation. Justice Winslow has been out during the stretch, but Gary Payton II, who missed the start of the season, has come back. They've played 9 of their last 10 games at home. And I think this makes an interesting point about kind of the Doug Moe standings that you've talked about on this pod a lot.
Yeah.
The Blazers peaked, they were +4 in that at the start of this homestand. They'd played 25 road games and 16 home games. And one of the things about the Doug Moe standings is, number one, like when he invented in the 80s, home court advantage was a much bigger deal. Teams usually won,
especially in Denver.
Especially
where
in Denver. But yeah, they
yeah.
won like 75%, but home teams won 67% of their games. This year it's 60%. In the last 3 years, including before the shutdown in 2019-20, when we had typical attendance, it was around 55%. So it's much closer to a 50-50 proposition now. But the other thing is, the thing about the Moe standings is you can't lose any ground when you play a road game, and you can't gain any ground when you play a home game. You can only go backwards. So the Blazers have gone backwards.
They're now negative
a lot.
By the way.
They've gone 4 and 5 on this homestand. And that's where I think if they, it starts to make those decisions a lot more difficult if they don't make up any ground in the next, I guess it's now a week and a half here leading up to the deadline. But you probably have to give yourself something to feel good about, that beyond just the West is wide open.
And they went 4 and 5 at home, and Dame scored 60 in one of the wins.
Yeah. And it scored had a 50 in one of the losses.
Oh man. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to read. Joe Cronin there, he's done a really good job. I actually felt like, if you look at his body of work taken over, I was really positive about what he did. Now, the Nurkic contract, I understand why they gave Nurkic that much money, but Nurkic his stats are comparable, but it doesn't feel like he has had the kind of impact this year as he's had in past years. And
this is something I've written about, actually, is that part of the issue here is just like, if you look at the production by the average center now, it is enormous. Like the efficiency of the average center is like we're used to, in terms of true shooting percentage, it used to be like 550 was the league average. And now it's more like 570 in that range. For centers, the average center, it's like 630, because of the fact you have guys like Nick Claxton who are shooting 75% of the field from the field now. So if you've got someone like Yusuf Nurkic, who is more versatile, does more creating his own offense at times than someone like Claxton does, but isn't approaching that level of efficiency, it makes them a lot less valuable than they used to be.
True. And he's also not a stalwart defender.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I just, I see people, people are always complaining about DeAndre Ayton. He's a very good player. Nurkic got quite a bit of money this offseason. Nobody really batted an eye, but that was a significant move on their part. He has a really good, historical, as the guy who sets the screens for Dame. And, part of the reason why Dame has struggled at times is because it was when Nurkic has been out. He's just very valuable in that eye. So, when you look at his stats, it doesn't include all the screens that he's setting for Dame. So just want to be fair about that. But
I would say that there are moments where it feels like they're a little better off with Drew Eubanks in there, who's a slightly more athletic defender.
And Chauncey's made that decision on a couple of occasions,
yep,
if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. I don't know whether I should be watching the Blazers closely or not. It feels like I should. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't think that they're there. I think that they do want to add. And the other thing is, you're dealing with Dame in his prime, but he's in his prime and you've got him signed for a long time. And that figures into your calculus. Some part of maybe helping, taking advantage of Dame is maybe trying to get him another really good player, another good young player. Or maybe you're in the lottery, even if you don't get super lucky. Let's say you get another top 10 pick and you have that pick plus some of the other things you have on your roster. And then you can go searching for a star player, another star that you bring into next to Dame, in addition to Grant, if you want to keep him. So I think that all figures into this. But Portland's a team, a lot of people are watching Toronto, and rightly so, but Portland's record and Toronto's record are very similar. Portland has, one of the things with Toronto is, what do you do with Gary Trent and Fred VanVleet, guys who you could absolutely re-sign, but are free agents to be, and you don't know where you're going. And maybe your pick could be, I think Toronto's in 12th place too, just like Portland. I mean, that was an interesting game on Saturday night when they played. Fred had a great game in that game. Toronto won. But like, I've been talking about Toronto a lot. Maybe I should, now I'm starting to talk about Portland as well.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.